Today's Justice Gap takes us to Aurora, where findings of racially biased policing and the use of force by the Aurora Police Department have required constant monitoring by an independent party. A consent decree was established in November of 2021 following several incidents, including the 2019 death of Elijah McClain. So over the last 4 years, an independent monitor has been analyzing the department's policies and actions. And there's a new report showing how the department is doing now in 2025. And to discuss those findings, we want to bring in our 9 News legal analyst, Whitney Traylor. I think before we get into the crux of what the report says, just kind of like jog our memories a little bit about what a consent decree is and why the Aurora Police Department has been dealing with one for the last 4 years.
Yeah, and a consent decree is used in a lot of different contexts. As a practicing employment lawyer, I saw it a lot of times in the context of employers being put under a consent decree and somebody having to monitor them in that context. Here, what happened was after the police accountability bill was passed, that gave the governor the opportunity to investigate various agencies, if you will. And so AG Weiser actually investigated the Aurora Police Department and the Aurora Fire Rescue under the notion that they were violating civil rights. And they ultimately concluded, AG Weiser concluded in the report that they were violating, they had a pattern and practice of violating state and federal law, primarily because of racially profiling. And so the city and the AG entered into this consent decree, and as part of the consent decree, as you said in the lead-in, the independent monitor then is reviewing Aurora's policies and practices, and they just released their report, the 8th of 12 reports that they'll be issuing over the next few years.
Yeah, and you just said 8 of 12, so we're nearing the end of this.
Correct.
And as I'm reading through this latest report, one of the things that struck me, because it's still something that the community, feels very strongly about and is still protesting over, and that's the shooting death of Kylan Lewis. But the independent monitor actually applauded the police department for the after effects, I guess, if you will, because they did take that officer who shot Kylan off of the SWAT team, and then they instilled some other practices, so they got a thumbs up on how they handled that. What takeaway do you have from this?
No, that was a great takeaway because it was a very long report, but really 2 of the takeaways was that they used real life situations as teachable moments. And so you just mentioned, because in Kylan Lewis, of course, he wasn't internally sanctioned in any way, and the DA didn't go after any criminal charges. But here the independent monitor found, even though there was no wrongdoing in that regard, they found things that could have went better, that they could have done better. And as a result, the police department has implemented different policies that the monitor actually gave them praise for. Same thing with Preston Nunn. And the Preston Nunn situation happened years ago with the unlawful tasing. He ultimately sued, got a civil judgment of $400,000. And there, the monitor used that specific scenario as a teachable moment, also pointed out some changes that were made. So really what stood out to me was that while these situations are tragedies, we see them happening again and again. They're now being used hopefully for good and for learning and for training, so it doesn't happen in the future.
Time will see. We don't have a ton of time left, but I do feel like I need to ask you about Todd Chamberlain, who was sworn in last year, who's been at the helm here for, a short period of time. I've spoken with him. He takes the consent decree seriously. Do you feel like he's moving the department in the right direction when looking at this report?
I think so. Now, it's hard to judge. What'll really be interesting is the next report, because this report was from August to February, August of last year to February this year. He was just sworn in September. So really, we just have this time. But they did say that the department seemed to be taking things serious. They did, compared to the last report, there was some improvement in use of force and recruiting and hiring, but they did have a reduction in the area of addressing racial bias in policing. So they went down in that respect, went up in another couple respects, but according to the monitor, they're moving in the right direction, and Chamberlain seems to be taking it serious.
And we will continue to take this serious because I think, being transparent with the community, that's what this consent decree is about, and that's our job as journalists too, to keep them honest and make sure that we're reporting what's happening.
Beautiful. And that's one of the beautiful things about the people power in this situation, because it was as a result of George Floyd and the death of Elijah McClain that we protested, got these new bills in place, and now we can see how it's actually having an impact with this investigation and the monitor being in place.
It has to affect change.
Yeah.
Has to.
Yes.
Whitney Traylor, thank you.